Sometimes I think some doodles are good, some doodles aren't so good. I'm going to show you two doodles. One I think is actually pretty good, and the other one I really don't like. But I'm going to tell you why, so here's the video. When I say making a good doodle, I'm basically thinking about how it flows across the surface, and if it doesn't flow, then does it have any kind of tonal balance where you have darks and lights and midtones? Well, this doodle isn't a tonal drawing, it's a line drawing. And the first one, I would argue, is the good doodle. This is the one which I think is interesting, has got design work to it, and it's a doodle because there was no thought or hesitation at all. It was just drawing, nice and relaxed. I haven't sped it up too much, and you can see that it's just flowing nice and naturally. It's bits of curves and different angles. I'm just having fun and playing. That's a lot of what I think is important and really valuable about doodling. If you can play and be creative, then you can discover things and de-stress. Things like that are really valuable. Exercises which work that creative muscle and also help with your mental health and can help you think about different things because you don't have to concentrate on the doodle necessarily. And you can, there are different ways of doodling, but this practice itself is just loops and lines and swirls. If anything, the only thing I was trying to focus on was to not hatch. The temptation for me to hatch is overwhelming. I thought I could start hatching in the corner here and I can create an angle and a shadow and a curvature. And that is a lot of what occupies my doodling mindset. So for this, I thought, no, I quite like the lines and curves and I'm not planning where they're going. I'm just trying to be impulsive on where I make the marks and intuitive on where the marks intersect, where the lines can meet and join and cross and diverge. That's what I found quite interesting about this. I did try to look at it a couple of times and think, what am I drawing? What does it look like? And I was concerned it started to look like something, but because I couldn't think of what it looked like, I reassured myself that there's no clear image coming out. And that's nice because that's where I usually go wrong, is starting to guide the drawing in a certain direction, but not really committing to what that direction is, or having the research and the experience in order to really have a decent finish and execution of that concept. So I'm better off drawing abstract pieces, doodling away, having fun, making marks. It doesn't have to be clean like this in order to be a good doodle, but it has to be something which you enjoy. And it's nice if you can look at it after you've drawn it. Something which you don't like looking at after it's finished, it may be a good doodle for your mental health and your emotional well-being. Therefore, it's a good doodle. But if looking at it causes any stress or anxiety, then it's a bit of a conflict. And this doesn't give me that impression. You may hear seagulls in the background. I do live on the coast, so there are seagulls outside the window. So just consider them part of the channel. So yeah, at this point I was wondering, does this starting to look like hair or wind, or does it look like the sun at the top? And I'm just concerned that it started to look figurative or representational in any aspect. I'm pretty confident that if it does, then it only does to people who will interpret it that way. And it's certainly not intended to look like that. And it doesn't hurt if that's what you see. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that that's something which I was trying to avoid for my benefit. It may sound like a strange thing to be concerned about, but it's something which I find to be a bit of a trap. Much like I used to make music. I still make music these days, but I used to make music in a different way. When I was in my late teens, I started to write hip hop lyrics. When I was in my early 20s, I met with a DJ and we started to make music together. And then as I progressed into my early and mid 20s, I met up with other people who practiced DJing and MCing, and I collaborated with several of them and made hip hop music. And one of the things I would practice with MCs is freestyling. Now, one of the traps that we would find with freestyling is if we couldn't think of a lyric or a topic or a rhyme on the spot, we'd find ourselves saying, it doesn't matter. And we notice that's where we are self-conscious. That's where we're getting trapped. So we discussed it and thought, if we say that, then let's think of several ways out of it. It may sound like less of a purist way of freestyling, but if we thought anything that rhymes with doesn't matter, or anything that gets us out of that trap and makes us more creative on the spot, will be of great benefit. And then once we learnt these different ways out of traps, we wouldn't say it doesn't matter anymore, because we weren't feeling that self-conscious moment of not having a lyric or a subject or an interesting turn of phrase to use. And similar to that, I find that looking at a doodle that starts off abstract and then pushing it towards something representational, but only with half of your ability. And like I said, I just mean without actually having the research or the concentration or the focus to make that really work for the drawing, can be quite harmful. Just like saying it doesn't matter when you're trying to have flow and you're freestyling. Maybe that analogy doesn't work for you, but to me, it's very similar of a feeling to get stuck when you're improvising lyrics and to get sidelined by some kind of pictorial digression in your imagination when you're doodling. It's something which I hope to avoid, and it's something which I would encourage you to recognize, and if you can't execute it well, just like I can't, then to push out of that with a doodle like this, which keeps arcing and curling and curving and ensuring that you make the moves that are the second thought that you have, not the first thought, which may seem counterintuitive because I said that I was trying to be impulsive, but my instinct is to push towards figurative and representational subjects. At this point in the doodle, by the way, I'm getting a thinner nib, and this is what really solidifies it as a nice doodle to me, because it's a slight line difference. Initially, I used a 0.8, and then I went to a 1.0, and this is a 0.1. It's not huge, but it's enough where you can see it's a much thinner line. Anyway, I was talking about how my impulse is to, or my instinct, I should say, is to find representational forms and push towards them. Quite often, when I used to doodle, the first thing I would draw is an eye and start trying to draw a face. And it took a while for me to get out of that habit and to try and draw and appreciate other thoughts and ideas. There's nothing wrong with drawing faces, but if that's all I ever do when I doodle, I feel as though it gets less creative every time. Especially if the faces don't really change that much and I'm not really pushing the boundaries of where the features and the emphasis and the expressions and the emotions lie on this character that I'm developing. So this type of a drawing becomes very important and very valuable to me because it's outside of all of those trappings. It has shape design. It has line weight. it has nice mark making and draftsmanship, but it also, crucially, most importantly, has freedom. It's free from any of the constraints of the imagination. It becomes something which I couldn't have I couldn't have guessed, basically. I couldn't have, my mind's gone blank. But I couldn't have guessed that this is what the drawing would look like. It came out of nowhere, and it started to dictate to me what it needed as I went along, with the assurance that I wouldn't fall back into representational forms. Now, there are hints of representational connections, just like the lines meeting and lines intersecting and aligning. So there are lots and lots of lines that curve with each other and that sit parallel to each other as though they are part of a sleek design, and that is influenced by representational forms. But as you can tell, it's nothing which you can point to and say, oh, that's a drawing of fill in the blank. And as a doodle, I think it sits quite nicely. It has good flow to it. It's interesting, it's creative, and I didn't overly complicate it. But it does have a technicality to it. Now, I don't mean to blow my own trumpet, but I like this type of drawing. And if I did more, that's what I'd like to do. Now, on the flip side, here is how doodling, for me, quite often goes wrong. I'll draw a curved shape, and then I'll start to connect things and make it a plane, or make it a boat, or make it a bit of both. And I don't know what I'm drawing, but I'm trying to fix it. I've made a mess, and I'm now trying to tidy it up. And because I made a mess, I'm starting to hatch around the outside to think, oh, maybe if I create some tone around this weird, bad design that I've started doodling, maybe that will rescue it. And instead, all I have now is a laborious task of having to hatch everywhere on the surface, just constantly pushing the background into this state of midtone to try and differentiate it from the subject. It doesn't make for a good doodle. Now, this is all subjective. You may tell me that the first doodle wasn't your type of thing. You don't think it was very good. And this doodle you might quite like. Or you may like neither of them, or you may quite like both of them. None of those are the wrong answer. It's subjective. But in my opinion, this is a bad doodle. I am panicking. I'm not enjoying doodling. I'm trying to fix it. I have something with a long wing, a short wing, the body of almost a boat, and no sense of idea or concept. Okay, so here they are. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, share the video. I really appreciate your support. I'll see you in the next one.